going.
All right. All right. Boys and girls, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to get started here. So everyone take your seats. Hopefully we'll have some folks trickling in. I heard SEPTA was a little bit late today, so including my wife and kids. So thank you everyone for coming to this talk here today called NICA, Getting Gritty with NICA, Kids and Dirt Change Agents for Cycling. Before I get started, I just want to thank the Philly Bike Expo for approaching us, a couple of us, about talking about NICA. So thank you. Presenting with me today over here is Pat Engleman, Director of Coaching and co-founder of the Pennsylvania League. Danelle Witkowski, head coach of a local Philadelphia area mountain bike team, SoMont Cycling, and Joe Brescia, who is co-founder of the Camden County Crew Composite team just over the river in New Jersey. My name is John Raisch. I am the founder of SoMont, the SoMont team, and I'm also Pennsylvania League coach supporter. You'll hear more about the SoMont team and Joe's team as we get going here. But first, I just want to kind of set the table for the conversation. You know, those of us who have been around the Bike Expo know that it started as a frame builders centric kind of a show about 10 years ago. And here we are with a bunch of kids talking about mountain biking. When we were approached, you know, we had to kind of stop and think about what message we wanted to deliver, given that there was going to be so many diverse faces in the crowd. You know, frame builders, bike industry insiders maybe, local bicycling advocates, youth athletic development folks, and more. So we decided to just put 3 points out there that we think kind of drive the reason why NICA is here and why we're doing what we're doing. Those 3 points are: 1, the health of our kids; 2, the health of moving around in our towns; and 3, the health of the cycling industry. This really isn't a surprise to anyone, but the reality is those 3 points are in pretty bad shape. So we're going to spend time today talking about how NICA, Kids, and Dirt are reversing these trends and give you examples of how our youth athletes, some in this crowd, we believe are the change agents that cycling needs. So point number 1, kids aren't moving their bodies. Screen time is exploding. Kind of look familiar, that photograph? Your kids, your neighbor's kids, your brother's kids, staring at screens. Well, look, there's tons of research out there that shows with each year there are less kids participating in sports. You don't need a PhD or master's degree to know that and see it. The Sports and Fitness Industry Association last year released a report about kids' participation in sports continuing to drop year over year. So to use a sports reference, sitting on the bench isn't even an issue for these kids. They're not even showing up to the game. Some other data points. This one's mind-boggling to me. Since 2008, the percentage of kids aged 6 to 12 participating in tackle football has dropped less than 1%. So a teeny little bit. Yet during the same period, kids riding bikes has fallen almost 12%. So just let that sink in. More kids are getting off bikes than they are getting off the gridiron. So back to devices and numbers. 2018, a study from the American Heart Association found that kids and teens age 8 to 18 average more than 7 hours a day looking at screens. It's just nuts. Point number 2, roadways are more congested than ever. Distracted drivers are making it worse. I don't know about you guys, but traffic in the city, it's crazy. Many other cities around the country. Jaywalking is a performance art form, darting all over the place. Our roads here in the city, from north to south, east to west, they're a mess. Vision Zero, which I'm not an expert on, but Vision Zero, a program aimed at getting people and cars around the city more safely. You know, it's used effectively around the world. but here in Philly, we struggle with it. So, to sum it up, no wonder kids aren't riding bikes. And it leads to this final point, which is the cycling industry healthy? Bicycle sales are flat. In particular, with kids, bike sales actually going down. And we all know that many local bike shops in our neighborhoods, they're struggling, or they just don't exist anymore. In my neighborhood in particular, there's probably 3 bike shops that in the past 5 years have just poof, gone away. So we're super lucky to have the Philly Bike Expo here in Philly. As I mentioned, it's in its 10th year. But the reality is that, the fact that the Expo's around, it belies some of the things that are happening in the industry. We lost our hometown Philadelphia UCI road cycling race a couple years ago. You guys remember that? You know? We don't have a guy at the national level. We don't have that guy getting us to wear those yellow bracelets. Anybody have a Live Strong bracelet anymore on? It's not the one, it's yellow. It's not the one I'm talking about. You know, some of the juice and glamour of bikes it's not there. But don't worry, we're not alone. Golf's got some pretty big problems too. Anybody golf? You guys golf? Golfers? No? You are a golfer, I know that. So all that stuff is super sad for those of us who understand the magic of bikes. But hope should not be lost, and that's why we're here today. We are here to talk about all the great things that the National Interscholastic Cycling Association, commonly known as NICA, is doing. We'll hear about kids in dirt, the true change agents of cycling. We'll talk about knobby tires and trails and how they're building strong minds, bodies, characters, and communities through cycling. These are the kids that are the next generation of trailblazers and the next generation of consumers for many of those folks down there on the floor of the conference hall building bikes. So to talk more about NICA, I want to introduce Pat Engleman. Pat's a local Philly guy by way of northeastern Pennsylvania. He's also the brains and the brawn behind one of Pennsylvania's most popular gravel rides, the Lou Lacka Wyco Hundo.
Very good.
So Pat, you can take it away.
So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about NICA and as far as the national organization goes and some of the history of the Pennsylvania League as well. But NICA's mission is to build strong minds, bodies, character, and communities through cycling. We don't mention racing. We don't mention any of those things, but through cycling. Okay? And then our vision is that every youth is empowered to be part of a thriving and engaged cycling community. And that's really what we focused on building. We race a bunch and we practice a bunch to race, but we also work on building our community, and that's one reason why we're here. Since day one, as John mentioned, this is about frame builders, and it was about community, it's about activism, and those were the founding principles of this event, which is why we're happy to be here. So NICA's core values, you can read them for yourself there. You have fun, inclusivity, equity, respect, and community. And those aspects are things that we hold true to everything that we do. Mountain biking, most of the time, is really fun. I would say a big chunk of that time is fun. Even getting it flat could be fun, hanging out and fixing and waiting for it to go the next step. Equity, we have boys and girls racing. We have everyone can race. Everyone's welcome to join our teams. There's no discrimination on our teams whatsoever. Inclusivity, everyone rides. John mentioned earlier, one of the first shirt we made that we sold here the first time we were here was a shirt that says "No one sits the bench." And coming from a background of coaching varsity athletics, like there are plenty of kids who never got to see any field time, but still put in all the time in practice. And we found that it was very, very important that people do not necessarily sit the bench; that people get to participate. So keeping everybody involved. Respect. We look at how we treat our fellow racers, how we treat the trails, how we treat other community members. That's one of the things we hold most true. And community, building a community. We're kind of stacking the house a little bit with our SoMont crew over here, but look at that community that came from meeting him at this event many years ago. So that's community, and that's what we've built, and that's for folks who haven't been to one of our events. That is seen when you look at a kid from SoMont playing, volleyball with a kid from Pittsburgh, and like that's the community, and that's one of the reasons I stick around, and one of the reasons why I do what I do is because we have the entire state. We have kids with friends all over the state, and those connections and that learning that comes along with that is totally you can't measure that at all. NICA's across the country. We just added a couple new teams. We have Ohio now. We have Kentucky. We have a bunch of other teams that have been added. NICA started in Northern California, out of the team there at Berkeley High. And they started in Northern California, and they've grown and grown and grown. We came along with New Jersey quite a few years ago now, but we were kind of becoming the old guard. We have Maryland mentioned up there in our earlier slides. Maryland is on there. Maryland was supposed to be here with us, but they got rained out a couple weeks ago, and that's why they're not here. Maryland and New Jersey we consider brothers and sisters to Pennsylvania for sure, but they're on that list. And if you look at the Mid-Atlantic, you could race from New York to Florida all the way straight through, missing only Delaware, which is racing for us, or New Jersey, and also the DC, which are racing in the Virginia. Some kids are racing in the Virginia League. So if you look at the East Coast, we've got it going on out here, and it was something that started in the West, is really focused in the West. We really got it going on out there. Speaking of which, our National Leader Summit, which last year was held in Idaho, is this year going to be held in Philadelphia. So we're going to be here. We're bringing the entire NICA community, national community, to Philadelphia, which is pretty cool. And it's going to be really, really exciting. So more on that as we go along if you stay engaged. So this is the 3 pillars of what NICA does as far as our programming goes. So if you take a look, it's easy to use a knobby tire, right? The fundamentals of coaching, the fundamentals of skills, and we work on those things, right? We are one of the only organizations